Thank you, Zimbabwe, for tuning into yet another informative edition of your program. This is Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, and I am Wadzanai Manyore. So this is a platform where we discuss application of business principles and business ethics in the agricultural industry right here in Zimbabwe. Now, in this particular episode, we have taken the liberty of inviting Chief Agronomist, Seedco Zimbabwe, Miss Wendy Matashu Madzura. We are here at Mutai Farm Banget in Mashonaland West. Wendy, thank you for gracing our platform with your presence today.
Thank you so much for having me, Wadza. It's actually an honor to be on this platform. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Now, as we get into our discussion today, we are going to be looking at sugar bean production, sugar bean cultivation. We have taken the liberty of even driving all the way from Harare to come here at Mutai Farm, where we are going to be looking at them exhibiting their knowledge and even in your presence of how they plant or how they produce their sugar bean. As we get into our discussion, for the sake of our audience there at home, the planting dates, the timing of sugar bean planting. When are the dates and when is the cutoff? Which points can a farmer not be able to exceed?
Thank you so much, Wadza. You know, there are 1,000 reasons why farmers are failing to produce and become productive in their farming ventures. One of the reasons is the failure to identify the planting window for a particular crop in line with, if it's a 100% dryland crop, in line with the seasonal forecast that is there. So time of planting is indeed very, very important, and farmers should adhere to it. Coming to this time of the season, we find that farmers should be guided by the fact that this time of the year, the expected number of days that are left in the seasonal forecast are relatively shorter as compared to when the season started. Also to do with the heat units, which speak to the rate of growth that the crop is going to incur. So it's important to plant a particular crop that is going to be in line with the time of the year that has arrived. So looking at sugar beans, Wadza, sugar beans is a profitable crop to establish. And it's a crop that is well in time with the season. As you will hear as we progress with the program, this crop can be established in 85 to 100 days. So it's a crop that can still fit in the period that we have left. So this is the ideal time to plant. It's in line with the seasonal forecast. It's in line with the heat units that we expect to get. And it's also quite profitable because farming is a business.
Yes, thank you so much. Indeed, you highlighted a point to do with heat units. You have to be timeous if you are going to be able to catch the heat units that are appropriate for sugar bean production. Now let us move on towards something that is very pertinent. I know that our audience there at home want to know, why would I venture into sugar bean production?
An important question. You know, sugar bean production is a beauty in that it has the ability to bring about protein content in your food diet. So it's a crop that we need to consider because it has a percentage of 15 to 25% of protein that you can get, which is to say in the absence of meat, you already have a protein source.
Very true.
The other advantage of doing sugar bean is the fact that sugar bean is a good rotation crop in that it's able to break rotation or insect pest cycles. For example, if you do your maize and you remove your maize, you put your sugar bean, the higher chances of you coming in with a breakage of the problematic insect pests like your fall armyworm and your African armyworm. So it's important for you to come in with rotations using a legume like sugar beans. The other important thing that you get from sugar bean is the fact that it improves the nutrition of your soil. It improves the soil fertility in the fact that legumes tend to fix nitrogen. So this will improve the soil structure and improve as well in terms of the fertility, which means the crop that is going to come after that sugar bean crop will benefit, especially if you are going to incorporate the residues of that sugar bean crop upon harvesting.
Yes, that is very precise, Wendy, and as well very detailed. You spoke of breakage of pest cycles, which can be a nuisance in our agricultural activities. Now let us look at sugar bean profitability story. I understand that most of our Zimbabwean farmers and even citizens out there are looking to get into agriculture so that they can make a livelihood out of it. They can repay their debts, they can send their children to school, and even looking at issues in our economy such as, you know, unemployment. Some of the youth out there might say, I want to start a project. Now let us look at sugar bean profitability story. What does it entail? You
know, the issue of profitability, Wadza, is a topical one, especially in light of the fact that farmers have now embarked on farming more as a business rather than an extracurricular activity.
Yes.
Or gone are the days when we used to see agriculture and farming as something that was not lucrative, that was dirty. It's something now that you can do profitably and sustain your families. So it's something that the nation can even benefit from in terms of the contribution to the GDP. Did you know that agriculture contributes between 15 to 17% of the GDP?
A very immense
That's a significant amount. In terms of the employment, we can't even mention. So that's an important thing for us to look at. In terms of profitability, Profitability starts by you identifying your cost structure to maximize on your return on investment, which we term the profit.
Okay.
So the important thing is for you to look at the cost structure. In terms of sugar bean, you are looking at a range of between 700 to 900 US dollars per hectare. Then when you move on to the selling price, you're going to be able to sell it at a price of about 1,000 to 1,300 US dollars per hectare, depending on the market.
Okay.
So market analysis is another very important determining factor before you establish any crop. The other thing that you need to look at is the issue to do with the yield level, the actual yield that you're going to obtain, because this will speak to the profitability and the margins that you are going to get ultimately.
Yes.
If you increase your yield level and maintain the same cost structure, this will come from your management. Then it means that you are going to have a higher return on investment. For sugar beans, Wadza, did you know that the profit can range from $2 to $3? Some can get even $3.50 per every dollar invested in sugar bean production.
That is very immense. That is very big.
It is. So it's a profitable crop indeed.
Yes. Now, as we round off our segment, Wendy, just out of question, I understand that you work with a lot of farmers. You travel around Zimbabwe looking at their agricultural activities. This season, your sentiments on this season in terms of farmers that are getting into sugar bean production. I understand that some are already running around. Some have already done their land prep. Some are still looking for the seed. Your sentiments as we round off the segment on sugar bean production, particularly looking at this season.
You know, looking at this season, you brought about an important point. This season has brought hope. It has brought a sigh of relief to farmers, having had a dry spell for a couple of years, 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
So this year is quite promising. I must say a lot of farmers have gone full throttle into farming, not even leaving out the sugar bean farmers who have managed to establish their crop, because like we rightfully said, the planting time is from January to around mid-February, where we find that the low veld, that's when they can continue planting going into the closer to the winter months, because they tend to have a higher heat unit during the winter period.
Yes.
But suffice to say, no, there's a lot of planting of sugar beans that is going on, and the only challenge that the farmers were facing is the fact that the rains were persistent.
Yes.
So some of them were failing to go into the field at the desired times. But my advice to you farmers is just, when you get the window, please go in and plant your crop and maximize on these good rains that we have. So it's important, and I know the other tips will be coming in as we progress with the program.
Yes, thank you so much, Wendy. There you heard it, viewers. I'm with Wendy Matashu Madzura here. She's just telling us on how to produce your sugar bean effectively. Stay tuned. We are going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment of your program. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, viewers. You're still watching Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, and I am Wadzanai Manyore. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with me, the producer, Wadzanai Manyore, on 0772-807-506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. You can make a follow-up on this episode and more, and leave your comments and suggestions on our YouTube channel, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. We are also now available on Twitter. Our Twitter handle there is at Agribusiness1110. Now, earlier on, before we went to the break, I was with the Chief Agronomist, Seedco Zimbabwe, Miss Wendy Matashu Madzura. We are still here at Mutaye Farm in Banket, Mashonaland West. Now, in this second segment, we have taken the liberty of inviting Mr. Dio Pote. He is the seed production agronomist here at Seedco Zimbabwe, right here in Mashonaland West. Dio, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Wadzanai, for having me here.
Yes, taking off from where Wendy left off, she was talking of the profitability story of sugar bean production. Now, coming to you, I want to look at the varieties. What are the varieties that are recommended or that are advisable for our local Zimbabwean farmers?
Okay, thank you very much. There are several varieties that can be grown here in Zimbabwe for the production of beans that include some determinate and indeterminate varieties. So there's a large basket of varieties which include bonus, AC bonus, AC sharp, AC bound, and AC ukulinga. So most of the varieties grown here in Zimbabwe have got a yield potential of between 2 to 3 tons per hectare. So here in Zimbabwe, sugar beans can be grown in any part of the country, whereby some can grow it on dry land and some under irrigation. But for the best practice, it's best grown under irrigation. Why? Because we don't want to miss the crop due to fail of the rains. So generally, I would advise growers and farmers in various regions to grow sugar beans because it is very profitable. In a way, the return per dollar investment is very high as you compare with any other crop that is grown. When you want to compare it with maize and soybean. On the basket, Ukulinga and Gadra, they are the ones which have got a higher yield potential, which goes up to 3 tons per hectare. So if the agronomic practices are good in their own point, there's a high expectation of getting up to 3 tons per hectare. And there are some farmers who are getting to those figures here in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you have spoken of a high return on investment, which is profit.
Yes.
Let us talk about attaining that good profit, maximizing on your profits. Now let us talk about farming tips. I understand that our viewers there at home want to know, how can I attain those 3 tons per hectare? So now can you give us some tips as an agronomist?
Okay, thank you. Farming tips, the generic come on a wide array. I would say they start from the selection of a variety that can grow in your particular area. Okay. There are high rainfall areas, there are low rainfall areas. There are some varieties which are susceptible to some diseases, that is fungus diseases, it's fungal related diseases. So I would suggest choosing the variety that grows well in your particular area. Okay. When you choose it, then you plan for it. So the planning part of it has to come on point. Initially, I would say there should be good land preparation. Okay. Good land preparation whereby there should be good tilth. Seed-soil contact is very important. That is a very pertinent key. It's of high paramount importance. Generally, bean seed is a poor germinator. Okay. Yeah, it goes through epigeal germination. So I would say the soil texture should be on point. The soil structure, everything should be on point, such that when the beans is about to germinate, it will not have any impediment or any hindrance in terms of germination. On beans, what's important after you have got your fine tooth, I would suggest you have the right planting depth, you have the right spacing. What are we talking about? Planting depth and planting spacing determine the plant population. Okay. Plant population determine the yield. Yield determine profitability. So I would say, if you have got the right population, the right seed, right agronomic practice, then you've got your profitability story. So I would want to talk about what the most important key in terms of establishment of bean seed. Okay. That is spacing. Spacing differ from one production plan to the other production plan, but it goes with a range. One can establish from one interrow to the other row from 40 centimeters to 60 centimeters. Then from one plant to the other plant, it's from 4 centimeters to 7 centimeters. Okay. That will give an average plant population of 250,000 plants per hectare of bean on a piece of a hectare. Okay. Yes. Then on planting depth, as we have indicated that bean is a poor germinator. Okay. The seed doesn't have to go down further. It has to be on the top side. That is from 2.5 centimeters to 5 centimeters. Okay. That will guarantee you a proper germination, and the germination will come so easy. So before planting, it is highly advisable to treat the seed. The seed should be treated either there are several chemicals that can be used. Okay. Yeah, there are several seed dressers. You want to dress it for soil-borne diseases and soil-borne pests as well. So with the dressing of seed, it will assist, it will go a long way on the germination and emergence of the plant. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Now I understand that here at Mutai you are also monitoring their sugar bean production systems or methods. Which variety are they establishing here?
Yeah, they are establishing AC bonus. Okay. Yeah, so with the establishment of AC bonus, they are getting enough guidance from establishment up to harvesting. We don't want to miss anything from establishment, the vegetative growth, flowering phase, whereby the beans take around 90 days to be fully mature. Okay. So the flowering of beans happens from 50, 60 days. So during that period, there is necessary guidance that needs to come in so that the crop will not be lost. What's important in bean is flowers. Flowers determine the podding. Podding determines the yield. you determine the profit.
Okay. Now, as we round off our segment, Mr. Pote, I understand that most of our Zimbabwean farmers would want to know in terms of, just to touch a bit, I know that most of our Zimbabwean farmers know that already, but to some, they just need an emphasis on that. Let us talk about crop rotation a bit. From sugar beans, which crop can you move on to? Or just before sugar beans, what must be in your field, or be it virgin land or whatever? Let's talk a bit about crop rotation as we round off our segment.
Okay, thank you. Bean is a nitrogenous plant.
Yes.
So what happens with bean is that it will leave a lot of residual nitrogen, considering that it undergoes nitrogen fixation. So it will be ideal even to bring maize, so that maize will benefit from the residual nitrogen from beans. It is really advisable. And at the same time, the bean is a bit susceptible to nematode attack. So when you bring maize, you are breaking that nematode attack. They're breaking the cycle of nematode proliferation. So in a way, I would suggest if you bring in a grain crop like like maize, or even bring in wheat, it would be a very ideal for you to have the cycle complete.
Now, Mr. Pote, some farmers are right here in Zimbabwe, even in Mashonaland West, and those that are watching at home might want to know the seed rate per hectare, the requirements per hectare.
Okay. The seed rate of bean it's a range from 100 to 120 kgs per hectare. That will give you a good population, that will give you the good yield, the good expected yield, and profit starts.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pote. There you heard it, viewers. We're now talking of crop rotation. He was telling us that beans are a bit susceptible to nematode attack, but if you place your maize from on a field that has been previously cultivated with sugar beans, you break the cycle. Join us again in the third and final segment of your program. Stay tuned. Welcome back, viewers. You are watching Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness. We are still at it. We are discussing sugar bean production right here in Zimbabwe. And in this third segment, I am now joined by Wendy Madzura. As I have highlighted earlier, she is the Chief Agronomist, Seedco Zimbabwe. And we are here at Mutaye Farm in Banket, Mashonaland West Province. Now, earlier on, before into the break, Wendy, I was with Dio Pote. He was telling us of the seed rate, where he was just basically explaining the requirements per hectare. Now, coming to you, when I understand that there are some agronomic practices that our farmers need to take cognizance of. What are those, the good agronomic practices?
Wow. The issue to do with good agronomic practices, Wadza, is a very broad topic, but it feeds into the productivity of the farmer, where you find that one farmer, given the same seed and the same inputs, another farmer will produce 0.5 tons, another farmer 1 ton, another farmer will get 3 tons. Yes. So there is a gap there. There is a yield gap that we need to bridge by employing good agronomic practices. Good agronomic practices are good in the sense that they will help to unlock the genetic potential of the good varieties that we have just heard about. So in terms of unlocking the genetic potential, you need to employ different areas of specialty. This include from the fertilizer rates, your weed control, your pest control, and your disease control, which we are going to cover.
Okay. Now, just to cut you short a bit, Wendy, I understand that you have highlighted 3 aspects. As you proceed, I would like you to start with maybe a fertilizer application of in your field, in the sugar bean production enterprise.
Okay. Looking at the fertilizer issue, it then boils down to the issue to do with soil analysis, which our farmers tend to shun away from and tend to turn a deaf ear when we come to talk about the issue to do with soil analysis. But it's the only and surest way for you to know and understand the nutrient level of your soil, the organic content of your soil, so that you start from there and build from there. Sometimes, you know, these farmers, they tend to be applying more than is required, and they are eating into their profit margins. Sometimes they apply less and they are already short-changing the crop. So you need to get your soils analyzed and get the desired fertilizer rates. But given the time now, some farmers might fail to do that. So we tend to have a general range where we recommend them to be within that range. So for fertilizer, when we are looking at sugar bean, the recommended fertilizer is your 7-14-7, commonly known as the compound D. But this is not the only fertilizer that is recommended. Farmers can also use blends, which are specialty fertilizers that come in with different formulations like double D or the cereal blend. So farmers are encouraged to use the recommended fertilizer for a particular crop. Then from the basal fertilizer, it's important again for them to note that the word basal wadza means that fertilizer should be applied at the base. You need to apply it at planting, not to come in and try and dollop it into the crop or under or besides the crop when the crop is already established.
Yes.
Because the basal fertilizer has enough nutrients to sustain the crop from germination, crop emergence to early stages of development. From that point on, the crop will require another fertilizer. And in this case, fortunate enough, because they are legumes, they'll start fixing their own nitrogen fertilizer from the fixation process. So it's important for you to note that basal fertilizer should be applied at planting. Then still looking at those fertilizers, we find that the top dressing fertilizer issue when it comes to sugar beans is topical, in the sense that farmers are saying these are legumes, so they tend to fix their own nitrogen. Should I then come in with an additional nitrogen fertilizer application or rhizobium to boost? But we are also saying it's a business. So in business, your yield levels should be pushed up as much as possible by any means. So you need to come in with a boost so that you can increase on your yield levels. So when you look at the issue to do with top dressing, there is Rhizobium bacteria which can be used. Rhizobium bacteria is a living organism. So this bacteria needs to be treated in such a way that when you are applying it, it is not affected by direct contact with fertilizer, waterlogging conditions, or being kept in uncouth conditions where there's a lot of heat. It will be affected. So it needs a cool environment. So I always recommend farmers to buy the Rhizobium fertilizer last, Rhizobium bacteria last, so that they don't affect its process of making effective Rhizobium fixation when the time comes. So some farmers may opt for that. When you use Rhizobium, you are guided by the rate. The rate for sugar bean will differ from the rate of Rhizobium that you will use for soya bean. For sugar bean Rhizobium, you require the 100-gram sachet, which is approximately 100 gram sachet that you are going to mix with 25 kgs of seed. So you need 4 sachets to mix for 100 kgs. Unlike for the soya bean, where you are going to use that 1 sachet to mix with 100 kgs of seed. So farmers should take cognizance of that. The other important issue is the Rhizobium bacteria. When you are mixing it, you need to put a bit of sugar so that you are creating a paste which is going to also then coat that Rhizobium over the seed so that it can be distributed evenly. So you are going to need 2 to 3 tablespoons of sugar, white or brown. You're also going to need some water. So for sugar bean, you're going to need 250 millimeters of water as opposed to soya bean, where you need a liter of water, because this is less seed as compared to the seed that you'll be mixing with when you're using soya bean. So this is important for you to note Rhizobium, its use, and the fact that the Rhizobium for soya bean and for sugar bean are different. So you need to specify when you are purchasing it. Coming out of that Rhizobium basket, some farmers may opt to just go to the use of fertilizers. So farmers might want to use AN. There's no harm in that. You can still come in and apply your AN fertilizer, and you can come in at around 5 to 6 weeks at a time when that fixation process is expected to start and the basal fertilizer has done its job and the crop is now growing vegetatively. So you can apply AN fertilizer at a rate of 100 to 150. Some can go up to 200 kgs per hectare. Suffice to note that you should not go above 200 kgs per hectare, lest you get luxurious vegetative growth at the expense of flowering. So what you want is the harvestable yield, the economic yield, and for sugar bean, the economic yield comes from the grain that comes from the pods. So you need to maximize on the fertilizer that you use. Some farmers may come in with foliar fertilizers. These are liquid types of fertilizers that are available on the market. So there's a lot of discussions go around the use of that fertilizer, but farmers are encouraged to use foliar fertilizers as complements to their standard fertilizers, so that they boost the performance of their crop, because these foliar fertilizers bring in the macro elements, nitrogen, phosphorus and potash. Then they bring in the trace elements that are going to add that niche value to your crop and make it more valuable and give you a higher quality.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was very detailed, and I understand that for our viewers there at home, those that are taking notes, this season is going to produce bumper harvests for them. Now moving right along, Wendy, we are left with a few minutes, actually 1 minute. In just a snippet, I want you to talk of weed control and pest management or disease management.
Okay, looking at weed control, weeds compete with our crop significantly for growing space as well as nutrients, as well as the ability to then establish themselves well. So weed control should be guided by the weed spectrum. It should be guided by the type of weed, the crop you are applying, as well as your rotation plan, where we don't want you to then say the herbicides have affected our soil in the next crop. And also when you're doing weed control, you should note that when you're selecting weed herbicides for sugar beans, they need to be specified that they are for sugar beans, because if you are going to use some herbicides that work in soybeans, in sugar beans, they can burn the crop.
Okay.
Examples using active ingredient are of metribuzin, which is a pre-emergent herbicide, and classic, which is a post-emergent herbicide. So you need to know that those herbicides are specific to soybean. When you buy, specify that you want a herbicide that will work in sugar bean and not in soybean, so that you don't destroy or burn the whole crop.
Okay.
Moving on to insect control. Insect control is important because as the crop grows, the foliage is like the kitchen that is going to produce the desired number of pods and the number of grain per pods for you to get high yields. So the most economic pest in sugar bean production is the bean stem maggot.
Okay.
This one should be controlled within the first month of establishment, where farmers are encouraged to come in and spray at day 3 from emergence, day 6, day 13, and day 21 within that first month to manage this maggot, because this maggot causes the swelling of the bean plant at the stem, where the stem meets the ground. So this will then reduce your crop stand. So it's important for you to note. When we look at disease control, it's important for you to note that selection of seed will guide you. Select varieties that are tolerant and resistant to problematic diseases. But nonetheless, there are preventative fungicides that are available on the market that will reduce the incidence of the diseases on the crop, as well as once you see that the disease has started, you need to come in with a systemic curative product to control the disease before it reaches levels where it cannot be controlled and it can cause economic yield levels to your crop.
Yes, thank you so much, Wendy. It was a pleasure having you with me today on this platform.
Thank you for having me, Wadza.
Yes, from what I have picked from what Wendy was teaching us and what she was educating us on was not to cut corners in sugar bean production or in any other agricultural enterprise for any sake. From me, your host Wadzanai Manyore, and the crew behind the scenes, have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.